Thank you, Paul and Mark. Thank you for inviting me to speak, and thank you, so many familiar faces I see here today. Thanks for your support. It's nice to see everybody. It's an honor when you're asked to come and talk about your business, but it's a real privilege when you get the chance to talk about your faith and your business. And so I'm honored to be here today, and I really do mean it. It is a privilege. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. You know, something certainly that's been on all of our minds lately, it is that time of year. And, you know, we certainly in this group, we think about the crucifixion and the burial and the death and certainly now the resurrection. And I know you guys would know what I'm talking about. And, of course, I'm talking about our economy. I know that every one of us in this room checks for the resurrection every morning. We run back to the tomb to see if our economy has been resurrected. I'm going to turn this thing just a little bit. Well, maybe it is screwed down. So I'm going to face the door here as I talk to you. I hear that the economy has appeared to a few people, but as you might guess, there are skeptics out there. But I think we're all running back to the tomb to see if it's been resurrected. I hope to share with you my story today and how it has shaped my outlook on business. And I hope that in some small way that it might be a nudge or maybe an inspiration to you and how you view your work and how you use your time at work, and frankly, who you use your time at work to impress and who you work for. So I think it's probably reasonable to start with just a short story about my background and who I am and kind of how I became a Christian. And I'll start with the point that I wasn't a Christian, and I'll tell you about that. I've only been a Christian a short time, 6-7 years, so I'm a relative neophyte, I'm sure, to some of you. But I was a pretty average kid, grew up in a, average middle-class home, 5'10", average weight, pretty much just an average kid. Was a decent student, got decent grades, attended Georgia Tech. I graduated with a degree in engineering in 1994, and I went to work for the Coca-Cola Company. And shortly after being at the Coca-Cola Company, I left a perfectly good paying job to start my own company, making no money. And my parents, were sure that I had lost my mind. And that I married my best friend from grade school. My female best friend from grade school. I don't think my male best friend would appreciate hearing that. And we had some kids, and my business started to experience some success. And, I'm bopping right along and felt like, I was on my way to having it all, the money and the power and the influence and all those things that I thought were important, that I thought were what you did when you became an adult. And to be quite honest, I had never had much use for religion or Christians. I was unimpressed. I just didn't. I hadn't grown up. Strangely enough, it was in the South for the formative years of my life, but I didn't even know any Christians. And growing up, none of my friends went to church. I certainly didn't go to church. I went occasionally for weddings and funerals. And true story, I did learn the Lord's Prayer in the pregame huddle in Little League football. True story. And that is why I'm in the Mount Pisgah Youth League, because lots of kids who may not otherwise get to experience anything other than maybe just the Lord's Prayer. I coach so that I can say the Lord's Prayer before and after soccer and baseball and games like that. But that's how I learned the Lord's Prayer. And I didn't attend church, and to be perfectly honest, I did not have a very high opinion of Christians and religion in general. And frankly, I believed that, I thought that Christians needed something to believe in because they couldn't believe in themselves. And my impression of Christians was just sort of the weak-kneed group of people. And honestly, Christians freak me out a little bit. When I the Christians I did interact with, or that I saw on TV, or that my folks knew, they were these wide-eyed Christians. I always joke about that, and I got to be honest, it did freak me out a little bit being around these people who had all this energy and this enthusiasm for something they couldn't see. And, by every conventional measure, I was living the dream. I had started a company. It was becoming successful. And I had married my high school sweetheart. We had 3 beautiful kids. I was making money. We had a house and cars and took nice vacations and did all that stuff. So I was like I said, bopping right along, thinking life was grand. And I heard an expression recently called decent selfishness. And I guess I like to think that was me, that described who I was, that, maybe I was self-centered, but I was a decent guy, generally speaking. And I was in a small group recently called Ambassadors. It's part of High Tech Ministries. If you're familiar with High Tech Ministries, they put on the High Tech Prayer Breakfast in Atlanta. And I was in this Ambassadors program. And there were about 30 guys in it. It's guys and gals. The first year they did it, there were only guys. And they broke us up into groups. And my small group was 6 or 8 people. And so we're about 6 months into this program. And really, I thought we had gotten to know each other pretty well. And I arrived early to an ambassador meeting one evening. And there was another guy who was from my small group, a guy named Sammy Jaja, who's in the marketing business. And so Sammy and I were sitting there and just small talk, talking to each other. And he said, "Matt, you don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "We met about 6 or 7 years ago, and you don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "Sammy, I'm sorry, I don't remember you. Remind me." And he said, "Well, I was with a company called Abovo, and it was a marketing firm, and we came in and we pitched your business. You guys were hiring a new marketing firm at Knowledgeant, and we pitched your business. And it was you and your director of marketing." And I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember that meeting." And I said, "Well, how did it go?" And he said, "Well, you awarded us the business." And I said, "Well, that's funny. I don't even remember working with Abovo." And he said, "We didn't work together. We turned down the business." And I said, "Really? What?" And he said, "We didn't want to work with you." And he said, "We didn't want to work with you." And that was hard to hear. And so you think of yourself as maybe this, at least for me, this decent, selfish person. Clearly that wasn't the case. And he said, when I became a part of Ambassadors and I saw your name on the list, I really questioned as to whether or not this was something I would commit my time to, because if they would let you in, then not sure I wanted to be a part of it. So that was hard to hear, I got to tell you. On reflection, that was hard to hear. Even after I had become a Christian, I certainly like to think of myself as having been a decent, selfish person. I'm not sure that was the case. But in spite of that, this isn't a crisis story. My life story isn't a crisis story. I mean, I didn't wake up in a dumpster wearing women's underwear or something. I mean, this was... I didn't have that rock bottom experience. God didn't like the person I had become and went to work on me. In about 2002, I started working at Knowledge, and I people began to work for the company that were rather overt Christians. I call them the God Squad now. And they went to work on me, man. And Rusty Gordon, who, if you were here last week, was our CEO. And Rusty was kind of the tip of the spear, so to speak, in the conversion mission. And by the way, there must be like a book club on Amazon for converting, these heathens like me, because I still haven't read all those books. Man, I have a library that the God Squad gave me while we were going through all our vigorous debates about life and Christ and purpose and all those things. And but they went to work on me, and I mentioned that we had these debates and we went back and forth, and I kind of think of myself as able to form a decent argument. And I realized as we went through these debates with each other about life and what it's all about and all those things in the workplace, that I really didn't have a decent basis on which to form an argument. I had never read this Bible that I was so critical of, or this religion that I was so critical of. I had no basis on which to debate. So without telling anybody, without making a big deal about it, I just decided I would read their Bible. And I would pray to their God. And you know what? I reasoned that if their God was God, that He would show up if I read the Bible, and I prayed for a year. So I did one of those, read the Bible in a year. It was Old Testament and New Testament. That's actually a lot to get done in a year. New Testament in a year is easy. Both was pretty hard. But I did it, and I said, I'm going to read the Bible every day. I'm not going to tell anybody, and I'm going to